Okay, we're going to invite everyone to take a seat now. We're going to invite our NSF program officers to join us on stage, and we're going to get started with our town hall. I would also invite people, if they like, to move to the good seats up front, because we're going to ask you to speak up and say things and be part of it. So if you'd like, well, the NSF people don't bite. There's lots of open seats in front. And in just 1 minute, I'm going to share a hot tip that you're really going to want to listen to. You're not going to want to miss this.
Testing.
Okay, here's the secret hot tip that you're all going to want to listen to. One of the best ways to learn how to write successful proposals is to be on a review panel. And the program officers here are always looking for wonderful reviewers. There's lots of you who participate in our community who would be incredible reviewers and would increase the diversity of the review process. And so if you'd like that experience, talk to the NSF people and see how you can become a reviewer. That's the hot tip. Okay, well, thank you to everyone who has stayed for our town hall. And yeah, there's food outside, so great that you're bringing food in. Let me give some of our NSF program officers haven't been up here before, so let's just do a round, go down and reintroduce yourselves so people know who you are. Go ahead.
Hi again, Amy Baylor, the lead of the RIDLE program, and I'm excited to have 3 of my other colleagues here, so you don't have to just listen to me.
I'm Stephanie Teasley, and I'm in the Division for Research on Learning, as with my colleagues here.
Sam here, I'm also in DRL, and my name is Fang Ke.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wu He. My research area include computer science education, data science, quantum education. I'm also the program lead for the ITEST program, Innovative Technology Experiences for Student and Teacher.
And I'm the lead for the CS4R.
And I'm not.
Because you're on a lot of other programs.
It's fine. We're all a little punchy at the end of the meeting. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our chart, and we have our wonderful graphic illustrator, Renata, so we can show her. Now on the screen. She's going to take notes as we go. I'm going to use this as a key to get us started. I might ask some specific people to speak, but it'd be great if it was kind of fast. And so if people see an idea and you could elaborate it and say something related, that would be really much better than ponderous. So I'm going to start out actually with asking Chad Dorsey, and I see your group, which was capacity building perhaps, Chad, was talking about centering users in design as a strength you saw in this work. So would you introduce that theme for us? And maybe we need a roving mic or just talk loud. Yep, you're going to get you a mic. I think I need this one turned down a little bit. I feel like I have to be too far away. Thank you.
So our group talked broadly about centering users, but some of the key users in our room were the teachers, practitioners who have been part of this conference, which has been a wonderful addition. And we had some discussion around the question of how we confront the barriers of helping research have a place in schools and avoid the friction of getting research into schools. So here's the hypothetical question that I'd be interested in hearing from our group's thoughts. How might this come about? So the idea was, problem is getting into schools. Schools often don't want people to come into schools because they have negative experiences. They may have just lots of friction and a lot of awareness. Researchers don't know which schools to go to, have a difficulty finding them. Our vision was, what if there were a brokering system that were able to make schools available to teachers or to researchers, and also a sort of list of norms that help people agree to obey the processes that have maybe soured schools on teachers otherwise. There's some research involved, there's some mechanisms involved. There are lots of different groups within NSF, whether it's programs or resource hubs like CIRCLS, Cadre, et cetera. How would a vision like that come about through NSF mechanisms, and what are your thoughts on that?
Actual question.
I think a central brokering would be hard because, as most of you know who try to work in schools, school districts vary quite a bit and states vary quite a bit. And so I'm not sure how we could broker that. So that part is that I can't think of a good NSF solution for that.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and I totally support that idea. I don't know that NSF has a role in that way. We can support you all to try to maybe do that at your level, but I'm not sure that gets
So
what you're
And I think we're thinking about, are there existing mechanisms or other places that people might go to? I mean, you could imagine a resource hub
Yeah.
having a bulletin board, for example, or something like that. So less NSF itself supporting it, but availing oneself of, various mechanisms, that plus 3 research proposals that develop these norms. We didn't know, but.
Very cool.
And having
okay.
some kind of, norms about that are separate from what an IRB would have you do, I think is kind of a lovely idea. And you could say to schools, we adhere to these norms that our community has generated for respectful interaction. So that would be lovely to have, right?
Yeah, sure.
Let's get more ideas on the table. So
Yeah.
does anyone see something really great about centering users or something related to that you might want to bring up? Just so we have, what did you see at this conference that impressed you on that theme of how this community's involving users? Anyone see something? Very quiet.
Don't be shy. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, bring it on.
Yeah, go ahead. We're getting you a mic in a second too, so you can say that again for us. Meanwhile, other people can think of some things they saw that were really good about centering users. Go ahead.
Yeah, the panel with the neurodiversified participants was really interesting to me, and it was good to see that was happening, and hopefully in other places as well.
Fantastic.
One thing I will say from running review panels is don't pretend you're going to center the user, right? Don't hand wave about that, because reviewers really don't like to see that in a proposal where you use that language, but there's nothing in what you're saying you're going to do that really blocks that talk. That will get you slammed.
Cool. Any other ideas about centering users? Wendy?
I'll keep this here.
One of the things, I was in the capacity building group, and one of the things that they talked about was, if you want to center users in the really rich ways that we've been talking about, like what Marcelo brought up and what we saw with the youth panel, we need time. And it takes a long time. So number one, possibly, longer term projects. Doesn't necessarily mean it's more funding, although that would be nice too. But you need time to develop those relationships. So number one is review panel. When you review or you are leading them, it's make sure that people put that into their program, and they don't assume that immediately everything is going to happen. It's going to take at least 6 months, a year, or more, capacity building funding, so that we can build those partnerships and relationships that are so important, I think.
Yes, I think that's a great point. So it is very important to develop the relationship with the communities, and also maintain the relationship after you complete your project. Yeah, so I will encourage you to co-design the project with your users. Invite them to join the project management and the decision-making process. The project should also provide a decent budget to your community partners, and work with them to implement your project properly. So hopefully Yeah, so you can sustain your relationship with your partners after you finish the project. Yeah. So if you adopt those best practice, there's a good chance they will continue to work with you. Yeah, so they will not walk away from you for future projects. Thank you.
I'll also
Okay.
say that we do have programs that do support that kind of capacity building, to develop those relationships. Because as you mentioned, and I hear you, it takes time to do that. And especially when you're trying to co-design these complicated interdisciplinary projects. And like we're telling you, we want the voice of the students, the teachers, the learners, the computer scientists and all of that. So there are opportunities to get funding at those early stages before you even get to the proposal.
I would like to point the same thing, like increase the time. Like for example, in the RETL project, capacity building needs a lot of time, because particularly when we are starting to implement, if something happens in the school system, once we miss fall semester, right, the whole academic year is lost. Because I face a lot of problems when I'm doing that. Like a lot of pressure comes after that. And moreover, in the capacity building, how can we bring a lot of people in that? I really like the idea of co-design here. And the next one is including the high schools, right? In every project almost, if NSF, I talk to high school principals, high school teachers, and they don't know that we can apply for funding, right? How principal investigators ask, we want to include them, right? So we want to bring them slowly, and that they will also be part of these grants, and they will also get equity on that one. They develop with us, and they tell us, so that we will have a connection between the high school and the higher education system. If that comes, our education will be like really, really meaningful, and our technology implementations will be like really, really best. And whatever we talk about responsible AI, if those kids don't know in the high school, when they come to college, how can we expect them that they will do that responsible AI, right? So that we want to really bring that from that level. And when they come to college, they will be very responsible all the way when they go to career also, right? So this is my point. I want to just tell, adding with that time, and also how to bring them with us. Because I really want to bring the high school partners in that, in my grants, right? And also we want to see how because the handling money is different, right? Once we get to the grant, that handling money is completely different. How the schools, how to do that, should be a mechanism to do it. Because high schools don't have the research and sponsored program, grants and contract offices, right? Yeah. So we have to see how we have to manage. There should be some pipeline should come in that one. Okay, thank you so much.
Let's go on to Amy. Do you want to say something? Go ahead, and then we'll pick another kind of accomplishment.
It's not me, but we have a practitioner who have a good suggestion to do a code design.
Okay, cool.
If going whole hog into the schools or brokering is challenging, we were thinking potentially of buying out half of a teacher's time, so reduce their course load to half, and then the other half of their time they are working with researchers. And I know it's not the same as the end users that you're going for, but at least we can bring our values and perspectives built into the projects.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you. So kind of along the same lines, wondering if we know that building a community takes time even before you start co-designing, right? So would NSF be gracious enough to say we're submitting a proposal and we are building in the first year just to build the community? And how would NSF look at that type of proposal and then say, okay, and then we're going to start co-designing, right? At the end of that first year, we're going to start co-designing, and then, so it's obviously we may not get as far in this 3-year grant, for example, as if we start from the first day, right, co-designing. But building this community is important, as we all know, but it does take time. So how are how would you take it?
So for CS for All program, we have one strand called RPP. Currently in the solicitation, we call it Researcher Practitioner Partnership. It actually means Research Practice Partnership. So you could definitely put the first year as your planning stage. You can even have a shorter, like 2-year project focusing on or prioritizing the team building. And then also have the co-design process research as a byproduct of the team building. In other words, is one of the outputs of such kind of team building is that you are going to investigate the context and optimal solution for team building in different setting. And I'm pretty sure that we are not sure how we can collaborate with across different school setting for different kind of culture, for different kind of domain. But at least if you could do some kind of purposeful research about given such kind of content, given such kind of school setting, given such kind of population that we want to serve, what is the best mechanism about working and building up that long-term relationship? I think such kind of fighting will be wonderful to build up the knowledge base about RPP. So in other words, if your goal is just to understanding RPP, that would be definitely one of them very valuable research project, at the same time, team building project for CS4.
So I'll just
Yeah, I just want to mention another program called Discovery Research for Pre-K to 12. So the DRK 12 program has a new project type called Partnership Development. This year, I think the deadline is next week. Yeah, so you can request up to, right, yeah, so you can request up to $100,000 for 1 year project. Yeah, so you can work with your partners to identify potential issues and the research questions. Then you can discuss the mechanism you need to address those issues. Yeah, so you can talk about the timeline, your plan to for future research and the implementation. Yes, so you still have a few days. Yeah, I encourage you to check it out.
A few days. That's so co-design, building partnerships, obviously a fantastic central topic, but I just want to make space for other things that are coming up here. And one of them that I see is the role of theory in our work and people celebrating that this is a community that doesn't just apply AI or any emerging technology in a superficial sort of way. There's a lot of that out there, but is really building on theories. So I don't know, does anyone want to speak to that? The notes didn't say which group was talking about the role of theory. Maybe it was the Learning Environments and Theory group. Erin wants to speak to that maybe.
Well, I was actually just going to say, I think there was something in our group related to the previous discussion that Janice wanted to speak to, and then.
So this is the AI Machine Learning and Equity Group, and so we talked a lot about the community building, but from that lens of trust in the community and how that does take time, but it's often not valued. And then the other point that was just brought up about sharing findings, even that can be a conflict with some of the communities we work with in terms of sharing out findings. And so we talked a lot about how do we navigate this tension between like oftentimes like the Western capitalistic thing to get more CS, workforce and STEM workforce versus some more, other values and other knowledge systems. And we talked about how, like some of the work I do is with like listening circles in the communities, and that takes months and months. And so we kind of found ways to get local foundation or local community sort of funding to do that work. And so just kind of getting creative, but I'm wondering what you think about that tension sometimes. And thinking with like 7th generation mindset, for example, or things like the impact that some of this work has on our communities and environment and all this kind of thing.
If you have
I totally hear what you're saying, and I agree with it. I see these are challenges. For sure. You're articulating it really well. We have funded. I can speak to RIDLE, and my colleagues can maybe speak to some of the other programs. we funded, and there's some PIs here, I don't want to call them out in front of everyone, but that have been doing some of these projects, for example, with a Native American tribal, society, and the amount of time and effort it is to just, to share these stories, and some stories aren't shareable at all, right, based on their traditions, and we value that, and we want to support those kinds of projects. So yes, there's a place for you in that, and I think when you're shaping your proposal, how you present that is going to be very important, so the reviewers can also understand it, just like you shared it there. That's my first.
Cool. So, yeah.
So this is a maybe transition to the direction you want to go a little bit, but maybe it's like cross-cutting. But I think my question is both with partnerships and also like tech design, the timing doesn't always work out, like what the deadline's in a few days or a year from now or 6 months from now or whenever it is, right? So I'm wondering if there's ever been like thought around rolling deadlines for some of these partnership grants particularly, or like I know there's Dear Colleague letters for some of the innovation that happens with technology, which is helpful, but like the timing when you're working with the community to be like, okay, we have 5 days or 1 year is it's not great. And so then we do look for other sources, which is fine, but I'm just wondering if that's been part of the conversation at all.
It looks at me, I don't know. I would say.
Well, I think that's a rapid funding mechanism, potentially, if you think that it's because of the data collection.
I think, well, rapid is one, but I think what you're talking about is like a rolling deadline and and we have done this in my directorate, where you have like, it's called a PD, I think it's called. It's a program, like SBE directorate does it, I think, for all of their programs where there's just a rolling deadline. Like the program is just live and you just accept proposals all year. So yeah, we have had discussions about that in general, but to your point, that's a great point about, especially when you're on this 12-month cycle with the schools, that does seem to make a lot of sense. Right. And the unknown exactly when you're going to find out and when the start dates. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so in the case of the ITEST program, we do have a deadline for regular proposals, but we also accept eager proposals and workshop conference proposals. Yeah, so you could work with your community to organize a conference. Yeah, so during the conference you can develop some ideas, yeah, for partnership. Yeah, so you can give it a try.
So can we think outside and inside the box at the same time with this? Which is to say, obviously you've only got the mechanisms you have, but it sounds like NSF is valuing partnerships and our RPPs in development significantly. So, one question would be, to Brand's point, can you have a rolling deadline within a solicitation? My guess is probably no, because you need a program call. But you could say EDU's making a separate program call that goes across these, that is a deliberate 6-page proposal that is reviewed quickly on the scale of a rapid or an eager or something, and these are for 100K, 75K, something like that, with the expectation that when that opportunity comes up, when the school says, hey, this is interesting, there's a way to turn that around quickly without trying to convince somebody that this is like a national emergency, so it should be a rapid. I mean, if we evaluate, we should put the programs in place, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I'll just add, remember, we're a federal agency. Turn it around quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, the quickly part, okay.
Yeah, so the eager award doesn't require emergencies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it mainly requires some transformative ideas, which will involve high risk and high rewards.
So you're just to clarify, you're saying sort of having this sort of standing program that could quickly fund partnership, short term, get things going quickly, like a 6-month kind of thing. That's a great idea. RPP program call, but across all, like say for our division or something like that. Oh, I like that.
Thanks, yeah. That's
I wanted to second that, I know from past experience when there were rolling deadlines on other programs, the flip side of the problem is you don't know when something will be reviewed because they're going to wait until there's enough for a panel. So you put in something and then maybe the review starts in 3 months, maybe it starts in 6. So it makes it hard to do something where you actually have to synchronize with a given start date. So I like this idea as well, because there are plenty of times with schools where they say, okay, we'll happily do this, but they don't have the capacity or either the staffing capacity or the time to wait until next year to do a full proposal. And it's not an emergency per se, it's a organizational timing. So.
Cool.
We do have other colleagues in the room who, it's on, yeah.
Oh.
So, yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manya Ruffin, and I'm our Deputy Division Director in DRL. I recognize some of you. Nice to see you. Great questions, and I hope you've been enjoying. I'm stealing a moment here to just say thank you for being here, and I hope you've been enjoying your time together. It's nice to have everybody together again after some time when we could not do that. To your question, your point about the rolling admission. Listen to me. Stepped into higher ed for a second, didn't I? In terms of rolling deadlines, I will say that many of our programs across the foundation that did institute rolling deadlines also got rid of the rolling deadlines. Believe it or not, when people don't have deadlines, they don't submit to us. So in many cases, actually having a deadline kind of got people to get going and submit them.
But not the people in this room.
Just wanted to note that. I'll turn it back over to my colleagues.
So I think we've done a lot with partnerships and co-design. Do you feel like and there's a lot of good ideas. Do you have something you want to say, Stephanie? Okay. And so it would be really great to hear some of the, some of the light bulbs that went off during this meeting for people. And so, and ideas people have for theory. And so I'm going to call him Kip because I think she had something about self-regulation. And maybe she saw something or would like to see more. But that's an example of a theory. So what were you thinking, Kip?
So we're supposed to think about future, imagine the future. And one of the challenges that I'm having with the AI flooding the K-12 system and all the conversations that I'm hearing at the site is, can you buy me a tool to catch the cheaters? And I'm trying to redirect the conversation to say that perhaps your assessment is inviting that behavior and you're almost demonizing your students who are just trying to keep up with the system that demands more and faster. So I was challenging the researchers in the room to create whatever the tool is. I don't know what it is because that's supposed to be a future that could potentially help the teachers to recognize what we innately do in terms of their social emotional state when they walk into the classroom. Are they ready for learning? And how are you defining learning as more or less a social cultural experience rooted in the discrete piece of knowledge acquisition? So I challenged this room to think about a way that technology can aid that learning environment so we center human in a way that is truly authentically human-centered. So you are a lot of smart people, so I issue you a challenge to be able to do that because our kids are literally dying. We have, in California, suicide contagion because students feel like unless they have 7 AP classes, they're not worthy of living. And that's the kind of environment that I'm trying to fight. I'm in the heart of Silicon Valley with all the technology, all the resources. So whatever you do, think about your students, that your own children, your grandchildren are suffering in a system that demands faster, more. So that was my thought.
Cool. Other challenges and thoughts people have? love to hear some more kind of challenges to the field. Where do we think we're going next? Joe has one.
Kip's comment resonated with a conversation in our group that was centering on humanizing AI and computer science, and what some people are talking about, taking more humanistic stances to these kinds of endeavors and thinking about how these efforts fit into overall societal activities and the rest of people's lives, not just their academic learning. And to me, that intersected with another part of our conversation in our group, which was went across both, what were they, thorns and buds.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to remember the framework, which was boundary crossing. That in this community, having people with the various kinds of disciplinary positionalities that are represented here, learning sciences, computer sciences, and a DT shared that it goes much beyond just those two positionalities. And so the nice thing is that we have seeds of better ways of facilitating the boundary crossing that are already happening, but the bud is that we could use a lot more of that in order to get to the humanizing that we're hoping for.
Terrific. I think, just looking at my sheet, Peng To and Chad Lane might have had some related ideas. Either of you want to speak about bringing disciplines together? Do you want to say anything, Chad? Yeah, fine. Okay, you failed the test. Formative assessment over. We were talking about finding disciplinary experts, bringing them together, and it was an idea, I say an idea bubble from your group about how to bring people together.
Is Pengbo in the room? All right, yeah, so Pengbo was in our disciplinary knowledge group, and Pengbo's a mining expert at the University of Nevada, Reno, and was talking about environmentally friendly, and so he explained his disciplinary knowledge to us, and he also talked a lot about his educational work, and that's why he's at this meeting. And so thinking about, so I collaborate with a lot of disciplinary experts too, astronomers. One of my favorite examples was working with master gardeners, and we, in that project, we asked, well, what was like a moment that you saw that really stood out, like a child learning something in a garden? And they do a lot of urban gardens in the Los Angeles area. That's when I was at USC. And she told me, she said as well, it's when a child pulled a carrot out of the dirt and was horrified at what it was. It couldn't believe that was a carrot, because to the child, carrots are peeled and in plastic bags and in the grocery store. Right. So anyway, so what it led me to think was there are a lot of disciplinary experts out there who are doing education work, kind of just using their intuition and, you know, engaging with communities, and it's just they do it because they love it. And so bringing a group of experts like that from disciplinary, you know, other disciplinary fields who are doing education, I think would be really valuable for us. A lot of the insights, and they've faced that challenge of communicating all of this detailed, complex knowledge, you know, face-to-face with kids. And I think those are, you know, that conversation we have with subject matter experts, you know, those are very important, you know, that we strike that balance between developmentally appropriate content and ways of communicating complex ideas, but also stay true to the underlying science and what expertise they all bring to, you know, to the systems we build.
So one hat I wear, besides being a director for instructional technologies, I'm also the director of CTE, Career and Technical Ed. And I haven't really heard much conversation here around career and technical ed outside of STEM fields. Now, I also believe almost every career has a STEM connection these days, but I would challenge you to think outside of your own domains, and this might be heresy, think outside of preparing kids for college, because there are so many routes now directly to career that are more productive and effective for kids, and how can we support that as well? Whether it's the experiences with virtual reality, which I saw some out there more on the higher end, but there's a branch now with that, where plumbers and welders and all sorts of, other direct-to-career fields through certification versus degrees is now becoming very in demand.
Would you like to see proposals? Are those welcome proposals that would be career and technical education focused? Want to say a word?
Absolutely. Especially, Wu, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Because especially in IT.
Yeah. So the iTest program is designed to help K-12 students develop interest, knowledge, and skills in technology areas, especially emerging technology areas such as AI, microelectronics, quantum manufacturing, and so on. Yeah. So yeah, we would love to see proposals in the areas you just mentioned. So NSF also has another program called ATE, Advancing Technological Education. Yeah. So I think that the program also welcome proposals that target high school student and community college student. Yeah, so they try to help students in secondary school and community college pursue the professions you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I just want to also, emphasize that when I talked about RIDL this morning, it's all content areas, all ages, all settings. So absolutely that falls in the domain of RIDL in particular.
Great to know. I see a great question here from Alex Marin, I guess. How can we change what we value in assessment? Do you want to tell us about that? Is Alex with us? No? He's got to get a plane. Does anyone else want to talk about changing what we value in assessment? And was someone in Alex's group and maybe heard Alex talk passionately about that, or anyone else? Did you see enough assessment stuff here at the conference? Is that something, a missed opportunity, or is that something we're doing okay on?
To clarify, you mean assessments in the classroom?
Well, I just have what to work with on the page. How do we change what we value about assessment?
Classroom assessments, right?
I think it's open.
It's open?
I'm just going with what I got on the page, so open to the audience. What do you want to make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we constantly see when we work with certain schools is that the assessments don't take into account the cultural background of the kid. So asking, a new immigrant kid about Thanksgiving in one of the assessments doesn't really resonate. They might make a mistake, but they shouldn't be penalized. So I think one thing that I personally see a lot in assessment is that there should be a change towards cultural sensitivity and background of the child.
And we can work on here. Does that fit?
Oh yeah. I always remember my favorite quote from Bob Mislivy, which is, "Don't value what we assess what we value." It's a great quote.
Yes, I was at the table yesterday where that was being discussed, and the point in context was that all the way up into college, if you start at kindergarten, how are you going to get into the best schools and graduate from the best universities? Well, it's all based on what we would call cognitive skills primarily, and so not just the appreciation for a culture, but also for diversity, the fact that having people of all different colors and all different types among those who reach the level of going to the most elite universities. The system is weighted against all of that right now. It needs to be changed.
So at our table, we talked a little bit about assessment and the ways that AI can make assessments more likely for cheating and not genuinely kind of assessing what kids know. And we talked about how in the next 5 years, assessments are going to respond to that by changing to become more open-ended and conceptual in kind of the ways that they ask students to respond to kind of prevent that cheating from happening. And I think that's going to be a huge shift for a lot of the ways technologies work in actually understanding and valuing kind of variability in kids and open-endedness in kids, and not valuing kind of mastery-based learning and answers. And I think that as a field, we need to really work towards thinking about that as we develop technologies.
Bring the mic to Erin, Pati, because Erin, they had a whole poster. I'd love to get some of the ideas from that on the table as well. Or your team, however you want to do it, Erin.
So I think I'll foreground two things, and then there are other people that were in the group too that could speak. So I think one thing was thinking more about public information surrounding AI and how to communicate what AI does, what the risks are, and then within that building in opportunities for people to opt out, and thinking about how we view that as researchers, right? Because often we view it as something either that was a failure in what, a failure in the student, right? They don't care or they don't want to participate, versus thinking about how we're designing technologies that might be exploiting people, or the way that we're crafting this environment that might not be including people. And then a second thing that I want to bring up is something that I was asked to bring up by somebody who couldn't make it here, and it was just that thinking also when we're thinking about community partnerships, about ways of funding practitioners or community organizers as researchers directly, versus forcing them into practitioners with researchers at universities that then also sort of impose these hierarchical structures of how those partnerships work. So I think he wanted to ask if NSF was thinking about that at all, or if there are mechanisms towards funding practitioners, communities as researchers directly.
Yun Huang from UIUC. So I think I hear the principal mentioning about more or less, right? Which is really, because I have high schoolers, which is about going to apply college next year. So thinking about more or less a lot. And then I took him to Silicon Valley, like in the summer. He enjoyed part of it, but also kind of like scared part of the computation. So I really resonate in that. With the comments about, Stephanie talked about value what we, assess what we value, instead of like value what we assess. So that made me think about what we really value right now, right? What teachers value, because in the table around lunchtime, there was one from the team mentioning about the teacher says, like, we really value students' experience in the classroom. And then I feel like the parents kind of value what where my kids goes, which college it goes, right? What's the grade? A little bit, but I'm not typical parents in that way. But then the kids really have that pressure to value more or less. So I feel like there is a gap, a misalignment between the different stakeholders in this system right now. And researchers, many times we measure recallability because it's quantifiable, it's easily to be, perceived as a objective measurements. So I think in the assessment framework, do we have a new framework coming up? Like we're developing new framework that we can help put in the AI not in the center, and a mediator to help us align the different stakeholders, mismatched expectations in this whole interaction. And then that's what I feel like the journey, the experience is more important than the curiosity. Giving AI have been, kind of weave the certain parts of the skill setting, how at what stage the kids should learn what. I'm wondering, like, can we develop this whole ecosystem with AI, place the stakeholders, and then new assessment, really position everybody to see, oh, we are here. Everybody know we're aligned with the final, where our kids should go, achieve at different stages. And they also develop their own personal journey. That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
get a chance to comment on the idea of, I was hearing something about being innovative in how we communicate the results or the insights or the findings that Erin was bringing up. And so I was thinking we asked NSF a little bit about, could you take a year in the beginning to get your partnership together? But could a RIDL proposal be especially creative in how it disseminates too? And, or, inventing new ways to get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, that's the broader impacts of your proposal, of any proposal at NSF, is looking at, what are your methods for dissemination is one of those indicators that reviewers are looking at. So they're the first people that are going to look at it on the panel. And I would say reviewers would love to see creative ways of disseminating your results. And I know as a program officer, I would love to fund that. So absolutely.
Okay, so NSF has published a new Dear Colleague letter on knowledge mobilization in June. Yes, we encourage people to translate research findings into practice and disseminate the knowledge to broader communities. Yeah, so I will recommend you to check out that Dear Colleague letter. Yeah, we welcome proposals in that particular area. The Dear Colleague letter is still available. So we stopped accepting supplemental requests, but we will still consider proposals in that area.
And for CS for All, there's a strand called research strand. Potentially, you could also propose an infrastructure platform, good methodology about dissemination or transferring the knowledge to build up the research database of CT integration or CS for All. So we definitely will be very happy to receive such kind of proposals focusing on the mechanism about dissemination for research strand.
Go on. Push it up.
So,
yeah.
Just to pick up on that, there's one set of stakeholders which I haven't heard mentioned here, which unfortunately is often the most important, which is politicians. And I know that obviously as federal employees we can't run that, but the issue I found is doing research in some schools, I want to make changes to assessments and the teachers can't, because the assessments they have are the ones that are mandated by the state, by the county, by whatever. And obviously we can't take funds and just lobby with them, but if there is a way, or I'm not sure what the best way is, to disseminate what we know about good quality assessments in a way that's going maybe not just to the teachers, but to the people who constrain the teachers. Because I feel like that, whether we want it to or not, that has to be part of our process. Otherwise, we find ourselves, I've certainly found myself banging into this brick wall of, we've developed this new tool, but the people who actually decide what's allowed don't understand it, won't allow it, end of story, right? We can do research, it's a pilot, that's nice, but to crack through, we have to switch almost to lobbying, which is obviously problematic, but it feels like that's something we need to do somehow.
I think if you were here yesterday when Wendy Nilsson was talking about our AI on the Hill Day, and there was a question there about lobbying, was that lobbying or not lobbying, and it was really, she framed it as education, right, and information sharing. And I think that this community has a lot to offer people who make the decisions at the policy level, not necessarily by lobbying, but by, translating your work into something that people can understand and bring back to the decision makers. So, and Wendy talked about how hard she and I and others worked to get the AI Institute people to, give clear, precise sort of, why it matters to your people. So think for yourselves about how you can communicate findings of your research in a way that can inform policymakers.
Definitely. And I think Yolanda was next, perhaps.
I was just going to comment on a couple of things. One in our group, and this is part of the conversation we had about AI and equity, we talked about this understanding of shifting the perspective to the community and their needs. And I think that needs to be re-emphasized often when we're talking about supporting this kind of research in the field. And when we're talking about community, we have to embrace parents as being crucial to this. I liked what Crystal said, who's one of our practitioners, that if you get the parents on board, then you actually have a strong foundation in which to push those policymakers, those school superintendents, and other key stakeholders to reconsider what should be allowed or supported or what have you. So advocating for that. But also thinking about different critical perspectives, critical consciousness, these frameworks that come from the communities that we want to work with. And so we have to acknowledge that some of the things that we value are in direct conflict with the communities that we work with. If you have to choose the community, not the researcher perspective. And so I just want to emphasize that again, because that's really hard to do, because it means decentering yourself as a researcher, maybe even as a practitioner. But if we're really serious about equity, then that's what is required. And then I think the last thing that I want to touch on is that there is this notion that everything has to be novel. You have to be creating some technology or some educational experience. Sometimes when you're looking at these communities that have been minoritized, just the act of bringing together itself is enough to have an intentional impact that you really want to have. And so when you're writing a proposal that's about bringing together different community-based organizations that are already doing CS in their communities, that should not be perceived as not research. It actually is research, because that's a very worthwhile endeavor, and it takes a lot of time and resources to do. And I want to impress upon that, because I can't tell you how many times we've put together proposals that focus on community-based organizations that are doing the work of CS education in a way that's appealing to, so in other words, I don't have to recreate the wheel. I just need, they don't have the tools to do the assessment. That's what I bring to the table, but they're already doing the work. This needs to be supported.
Just want to make a comment about the definition of research, right? I mean, we, of course, came from the academia, and sometimes we may have our narrow conceptualization about what research is. But I just want to say that at least for CS for All program, the definition of research, actually, it's much broader than traditional what we think about research. If your effort is to be able to generate and transfer the lessons, tips, the way of solving the problems that can be transferable, sustainable, and generalizable to the other side, to the other community, to the other groups, and such kind of effort is purposeful, then this activity will be called research. So if you want to really argue for that, you should make it very clear in the proposal about why such kind of activity is going to create that output. And it is purposeful. And I think reviewers are going to buy that idea. It's just sometimes in the proposal, we kind of assume that everyone agree that such kind of activity is research. And maybe it just deserves you a little bit more space and effort, just make it clear. And I think the reviewers will be very open-minded about that. I know Atlas PO will be open-minded about that.
This has been a great conversation, town hall. I want to close on time, because I know people have planes to catch. And I want to offer our NSF program officers a chance to reflect on the experience of being here at Circles and offer any closing reflections you want to share with this community as we wrap up.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conference. Yeah, so I want to make a comment on the national priority areas, including quantum education, microelectronics, and semiconductor education. So the ITEST program and some other programs are looking for proposals in those emerging technology areas. Yes, so the ITEST program deadline is next August, so you still have a lot of time to prepare your proposal. Thank you.
Closing reflection?
Yeah, I just want to make it really clear that we welcome your ideas, and you know, after I had my little talk this morning and afterwards, you know, you have a talk and you think, oh, I should have said that, you know. I don't know if I made that clear, is that we want to hear from you what your projects are. And emailing the 1 to 2 page project summary is really the best way to start. A couple people were saying, well, I've called a program officer and they haven't answered the phone. Just send an email with your idea. When you have something concrete, it's just much easier to work with. So please don't be shy about that, and do, you know, share your ideas with us so we can give you feedback and find a home for your work.
Yeah, and I think, so I was reflecting to Amy, I may have been literally at every single circles summits that you've had over the years. And you know, it's a wonderful community, and I've seen it build over the years. And the fact that there's so many new faces here, I think, is really reassuring that we are indeed, you know, working with a very active, very you know, collaborative and welcoming community. So I hope that you felt that your ideas are as welcome here as Amy and us feel like we do welcome these. And don't be afraid, don't be afraid. It's like being on the program officer side of the table now. How many times people say, I didn't know I could talk to you. I didn't know that I could volunteer to be on a review panel. I didn't know that. It's like, oh my gosh, our job is not just to sit in a room with reviewers and stamp, you know, approve or not approve on proposals. Our work is development, right? We want good science, and the more you talk to us, the more we can help you shape your ideas into ways that reviewers will be like, yeah, we got to fund this. That's what we want to see.
And you are taking good notes of this session, we were told. So all of your ideas, we are looking forward to seeing these written up, right, Jeremy?
I have lots and ideas.
We're shaking our head, nodding because
yeah, we couldn't cover everything. There were so many, just copious, great ideas that people had. And I just want to note, not only are you here, but there's a bunch of NSF program officers who've been with us throughout. I see some who have come in just recently, perhaps, and it's just really great, I think, for the community to feel like we're engaged with each other. So I just want to thank you for doing that. I want to thank everyone at NSF for coming on over and being part of this. And I think we're about good to start closing. So I want to thank everyone here for participating so strongly in what we set out to do, which was, you know, to meet people, to exchange expertise, to build relationships for the future, to start to ideate what's next, and to start to strategize. And I think everyone's at the end of 2 days, it's always a little tiring. It's been a lot. It's been like drinking from a fire hose, so many ideas. But I've also, throughout the meeting, had various people come up to me and tell me stories about, you know, this thing I'm working on now, you think it's really big, but it started with one little conversation on a bus. It started with someone I met. It started with a conversation at a round table that pointed me in a different direction. It started because I met that practitioner, and she or he really impressed upon me that I got to think about this differently. And so this is just the start. And the CIRCLS team is here for you. We're going to try to channel this. And I just hope you take everything you've gotten in these couple of days and, you know, go forth. And I mean, the demand is out there. The need is out there. So the opportunity to propose is out there. And as we learn from Amy, many places that we can propose. So I just want to wrap up by closing by one more time thanking the amazing CIRCLS team. Please stand up if you're on the team that produced this event. Thank you. And we all wish you successful travels, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas. Thank you.